So Haddon is an interesting, very interesting guy, and he's also a guy that I would like to say is my mentor, but not only that, a great friend. Haddon, this is from odysseymedical.com, not myself. Someone wrote this. Haddon is a recent nursing graduate student from the University of British Columbia and a registered nurse. He works in the emergency department in Vancouver, Ontario, Canada, British Columbia. And as well, he's an emergency medical responder. Haddon has been a part of the event medicine world since 2014, where his passion first began. This was right from Odyssey Medical. And after volunteering with the medical team during an obstacle race, he found that he had a growing passion for it. So Haddon himself is amazing. He's got so much experience for being his age that he is. And we're going to invite him right now, actually. But before we do, I'll just give you a little bit about a background. So he has a background in pre-hospital care and marine search and rescue, and it's led to a keen interest. He's actually focused on mass gathering, wilderness, disaster, and emergency medicine. Within Odyssey, Haddon is actually part of the medical direction committee. So he's helped provide medical coverage across Ontario, across Canada. It's an international company, and they actually focus on emergency medicine. So he's going to have a lot of insight into when people do go to Boots and Hearts and Veld and all these major music festivals. Odyssey is the medical team that's mitigating everyone's liability in a sense and limiting the strain that companies actually face, or I should say organizations, hospitals, and resources, and they really limit the amount of resources that is actually used. So Haddon has gone to Trent University, where he first began his academia. Not only that, now he's at University of British Columbia. He's graduated the nursing program, working in the ER, and deferred his graduate studies for 1 year to pursue other ventures. So now he's doing WADM, the World Association of Disaster and Event Medicine. And Haddon is truly an amazing guy. And right now we're going to actually, if Carson is able
Yeah,
to invite him, and
he
we'll.
he's in our waiting room right now, so he's all ready for us.
All right,
All
let's get
right,
Haddon.
awesome.
Perfect. Let's join him in here, and
Yep.
we're live. I'll give you a bit of an introduction. That we'll wait while he's connecting his audio, and then once we see his face pop up, he'll have a glare and smile. Haddon is a guy who's always there for everyone, and yeah, and so once he connects to the audio and make sure he's good, we just got a check mark on that front, and he should be joining momentarily. Haddon,
Hi guys, how's it going?
good. How are you doing? So
So what are you up to these days? You mentioned some projects.
Yeah, so I'm kind of just trying to keep busy. And as always, I typically have a few things on the go. So I just got started. I was just hired into an emergency department in Vancouver, and I'm now working full time as a registered nurse there. And so that's eating up quite a bit of time. But then on the side, with that, there's also some research projects and some other roles in the medical direction world, and things in the event world are kind of on hold right now. But as everyone is acutely aware, the disaster
acutely
world
aware.
is,
I like how you
is always
worded that.
busy.
Awesome.
Cool.
So we just wanted, before we get into your research and your recent adventure with Wadham, Odyssey Medical, you name it, we wanted to get a good synopsis of kind of your academia, like kind of like what got you into it. So we'll start with your undergrad at Trent. So you went to Trent, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And what did you take at Trent there?
Yeah, so I was at Trent from 2013 until 2017, and I completed an honors in biology, so BSc. And then during that time, that was sort of when, and previous to my fourth year, as I'm sure many people have thought, there's no interest in research, there's no interest in ever stepping foot in sort of that academic space, because I don't, and I still don't consider myself to be in that space really.
Yeah.
But so I started at Trent, did a biology degree, and then began to, at the end of my degree, began to kind of dip my toes in the research field. And then after Trent, I spent a year in the nursing program it was a collab program between the University of Windsor and St. Clair College. And I continued to do some research there, and then I began to work with a few different partners in that sphere. And then after my first year, I ended up transferring to UBC, which has a compressed nursing program. And I was able to continue my research out west and do the compressed program in like 20 months.
Wow, good
and
for
then
you.
just graduated 2 weeks ago. So that the undergraduate journey has officially
give
come to
him
an end.
Yeah,
Can we give him a
congrats.
Well,
congratulations
thank you.
clap? Yeah, and I know it's early in BC, so thanks for doing this.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, so we'll venture into some of your. You said you went to, so now we're at Trent to UBC, and you're starting to get into the space of research. What got your foot into the door?
Mhm.
Was it Odyssey or was it?
No, it was actually, so yeah, for context, so Odyssey, this is actually where Jameson and I met. It is a event medical company. So essentially any sort of gathering or organized event, you typically need some sort of medical response. And so that's what Odyssey provides. And I was able to begin working with them in the later end of 2017. Actually, the way I got into research was a little bit interesting because it was kind of just a spark between a friend and I who was doing her residency at the time and needed to work on a research project. And we had met years ago and worked together with the Spartan Race medical team. And so she reached out and she basically said, I have all this data. I think there's a lot of potential here. I think we can get this published. Do you have the time and the desire to work on this and to write a paper? And it's funny. I'm sure you guys have experienced this as well. Writing a paper about something you're actually interested in or have experience with is a totally different experience. And so it was actually largely it was absolutely wonderful. And then during the end portion of that paper, I went to a conference and was talking a little bit about what I was doing and some of my interests, and some of the people who I was citing a lot and who was a fan of the research were actually
No way.
And so that was actually some of the medical directors at Odyssey who were there. Wow. And we hit it off, and then we've been collaborating basically ever since.
So anyway, so now you're at UBC, you're working at in the emerge department. First off, that's got to be crazy.
It's definitely and especially during COVID too, it's been a little bit interesting. And so we've been kind of joking a little bit about how the program that I graduated from was already so fast, and then where orientation was fast, the jumping into work is fast, so everything's been kind of turned up a few notches, but it's going well so far. So we'll see how long we can ride that train.
You know those healthcare shoes that for workers? I'm going to ship you a pair of those.
The free pair.
Yeah. Sponsored by me.
So how are you balancing working as a new nurse and then balancing all your research projects and all your work you do with all these other organizations? How are you keeping all that on the go?
I definitely do it better on some days than others. I think the life and school balance has always been something I haven't necessarily worked on in the past, and I'm trying to be a bit more mindful of that now that I'm transitioning to that graduate and employed life. And so kind of in the past there wasn't really a divide. It was just sort of you'd wake up and then you go to bed, and then whatever happened in between was a mix of whatever, but there wasn't any sort of designation or allotment. So I am trying to get a little bit better at that. But with when new projects come up and new propositions that are being put forth and stuff, it is tough to, especially when you're in your 20s and stuff. Like this is really a decade for career building and honing in some skills and kind of finding a space to become comfortable with. And so I'm still kind of in that mindset of the divide between work and life isn't necessarily there, which isn't healthy, I'm sure. But on the flip side, a lot of the stuff that I do is I find really enjoyable, and even if I wasn't working, I would still be doing it. So it's nice that is sort of the stuff that I'm involved with. But yeah, these days I am trying to schedule a little bit better and to slot times for certain things, and to make sure that I have protected time to be around friends and family and to maintain obligations and everything. So in terms of the kind of getting your foot in the door for research, I think the challenge that I've kind of heard anecdotally from nursing students kind of across the country is that I find that a lot of the time what you learn is just what you see in class or what your professors show, which obviously varies hugely by school to school. And so as a result, you're kind of only seeing a snippet of what is actually out there. So for reference, I'm working and researching in the emergency mass gathering and disaster sector, and those are things that aren't really talked about in class, but on the research and life side are pretty exciting and really interesting to be involved with. So one of the things I'm a big proponent of is FOAMed. So that's I don't know, are you guys familiar with FOAMed?
Nope. You mentioned it briefly, but nope, not really.
Perfect. Yeah. So and that's kind of a thing too, where I've found in schools it isn't really being pushed, and so people don't really know about it. And so it's one of those things of if you don't know, you don't know. So FOAMed is kind of this online movement towards free, open access medical education, and so that comes in the way of podcasts, blogs, webinars, things like this podcast that we're doing. And so I'm fairly deep into that, and I try to really follow what's going on in social media in the medical education community and stuff. And so as a result, I've been very lucky to be privy to experiencing and exposing myself to different areas and different fields, which have furthered my interest. So for you guys, for any listeners out there who are tuning in, if you have the opportunity to go on Twitter and to just hashtag FOAMed or hashtag MedEd or Instagram or Reddit or
spread the word
or whatever, it really does help expand your views as to what is out there in terms of education and job opportunities. And so for research wise, this kind of translates to just understanding a little bit more as to what's actually happening and the different, not only the different researchers and the different organizations involved in your area, but then the job opportunities and things like that as well. But again, the challenge is you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so the kind of consistent advice I've been giving on this is that if you have a general interest, so if it's public health, if it's palliative care, if it's any sort of, like emergency or whatever, if you take and again, all this stuff takes time, but if you're able to dedicate a few hours and just really kind of go in deep on Google and try to find conferences that align with your views or with your interests, and essentially by checking out these conferences, which have over 100 abstracts, 200 abstracts, and a real smorgasbord of interests and speakers, you can kind of get a bit of a sample, and it's almost like a taster as to what else is in that field. So if you're interested in psychology, for instance, there's tons of sub-disciplines in psychology, and I don't know what they all are, but there are certain conferences which you can kind of experience an array of different research and the different disciplines, and kind of get your feet wet and see, I really enjoy this and I don't really enjoy that. And so because of this, I'm going to explore this area deeper. And that kind of, again, turns around into the FOAMed community, because a lot of the researchers and people who are prominent in their fields are also on Twitter. And so you can kind of in this stage, we can take a glimpse into what they're doing. We can see what conferences they're endorsing, what people they're following and retweeting and stuff. And if you spend enough time and go down that rabbit hole, you can actually find some really, really cool people, and you can and just totally expand your interest in your area of knowledge.
You briefly touched on Haddon, but that is something that needs to be explained as well, because that's no small feat yourself, Haddon and all of your stuff that you've done there.
I can touch on Haddon for sure. So Haddon is the World Association for Disaster and Emergency Medicine. It was a very kind of happenstance encounter I had, where I very quickly found out about this conference at the end of my 4th year.
Yep.
And it was, for reference, this is an international organization that focuses on disaster and emergency healthcare, and as well as a bunch of other subdisciplines. And so the audience is truly international. And so as a result, this conference is held every 2 years somewhere in the world. So the year before, I believe it was I think it was in Germany. Don't quote me on that. But and then and then 2 years afterwards, it was held in Brisbane. So it really, I was again incredibly lucky that it aligned with where I was at the time, and quite literally aligned with my research and interest. So it was held in Toronto, and again, one of the things I'm always trying to encourage is people volunteer, and that there's no such thing as a bad volunteer or a wasted opportunity or an experience that won't somehow come around to help in the future. And so at this conference, I was able to meet these researchers and all these fairly prominent, really, really interesting people. And in some conversations, I was then pointed towards some of the executive members because I was kind of curious as to why there were only like 13 students at this event. And because, it was so impactful, and it is so fulfilling that, you want something like this to be shared with the larger community. And from there, basically, during that week, my partner or co-Wadham partner, Humera, and I were tasked with creating the students' special interest group and leading the international effort to bring students
holy
into the
moly.
organization
Wow.
and to expose them to the fields of like disaster preparedness and emergency healthcare and whatnot. So for the last 3 years, we've been working on that and trying to find models that can work and that can really help students experience this and understand what's going on, because I don't know totally what your curriculum is like, but I can imagine that disaster preparedness and disaster readiness is rarely ever touched.
So if someone watching this is interested, how can they learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So you can just Google Wadham, so WADEM, and then there's quite a bit of information on their page as well. So we have we have some membership options as well. Students, there's a discounted one, and then special interest groups as well. So those are groups that are formed which promote specific areas that include chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear response, emergency medical response, counterterrorism medicine, mass gatherings, nursing, osteopathic medicine, primary care, psychosocial, and then we have our student special interest group.
Okay.
And so we have different things there. Wadham also created a journal, so pre-hospital and disaster medicine. And so there's lots of ways that people can interact and engage. And then kind of the shining star that we have is our biennial Congress, which if anyone is interested, it will be held in Tokyo in 2021 in May. And so those are some of the things that we offer that are kind of paid for. But then we also have a webinar series, podcasts, and we have a global health cluster, as well as a bunch of initiatives that we're trying to roll out in the next little while. So obviously right now, as with kind of the rest of the world, there is a focus on COVID. So a lot of our recent resources are COVID related, but if you're not a member, you can access any of our previous webinars for free. So that includes things like complex humanitarian healthcare, pre-hospital management of accidental hypothermia and cold injuries, disaster nursing, solutions to global issues from Japan, a lot of like really, really cool stuff. And I've been very fortunate to be involved with this organization and a lot of members. So currently I also sit on the board of directors. So what we're trying to do is help steer this organization a bit more in the path of full international inclusivity, so that people from all countries can really have the resources needed to be prepared.
Since we are the QNRC, the Queen's Nursing Research Club, I just wanted to ask you a question about your research that you've done.
Yeah.
So I guess you started off kind of having a mentor with your research. Do you still look for someone as a mentor for your research, or now
Absolutely.
are you? Okay. So you're still.
Yeah, totally. Sorry. Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think I think that it is, yeah, what you're getting at is exactly what you need to be guided and to have that mentorship and to have somebody who's a little bit more experienced or a lot more experienced to really help push you and to expose you to those new areas and to really increase your quality of work. So I like right now I have a few mentors and they're all just absolutely fabulous and they each helped me tremendously. And so my mentor who initially reached out and proposed that very first paper, she was the medical director for the medical team that I was working on before, and then eventually ran after she left for residency. And so it was really nice that we had a relationship that was both personal, professional, and academic. And so we're close friends and we can kind of talk to each other about anything whenever that is. So it's nice to have that support, knowing that kind of any situation that comes up, I know I have somebody who is around and completely in my corner to help troubleshoot whatever thing is happening that I need some immediate assistance on, or picking each other's brains on some of those long-term goals and stuff. And then I've been very fortunate to have a couple other mentors in the last few years as well, who've really helped kind of propel that learning and the education into academia, and have provided, again, total support. And since moving to Vancouver, I've been able to meet them in person and hang out with them, and it's a wonderful moment when you have mentors who are also your friends. And so I think that's probably, again, one of the bigger advices I have for people who, kind of no matter what you're doing, like a mentor, I really feel is imperative for your continual progression and those goals that you want to achieve. And so whether it's academia, whether it's nursing, whether it's a different field, like whatever it is, like you can never go wrong by having somebody who's more experienced and can help offer insight. And again, especially if you have mentors who are professionals in that space, or who are very well versed, or have similar career goals or trajectories, then it's really nice to have that other person to help push you and guide you, and sharing resources and being there to support you, which is
okay. Again, what we want to do at the QNRC is we want to have mentors that we can connect students interested in research with. So we're trying to reach out and find some mentors that'll help mentor the club, but also individual students who want to do research of their own. So looking for mentors, do you look for postgraduate students or professors, or what do you look for?
Honestly, whoever. Anyone who has a bit more experience than you, I would consider a mentor. So whether they're a few years younger than you or a few years older, if they have some insights and some experiences that are able to help guide you in whatever capacity. So I would definitely wouldn't limit that search to professors or just to graduate students. It can kind of be anyone in whatever capacity that you think that a relationship could be created and maintained. And sometimes that's only in it's in a bit of a vacuum. So whether you're on a different rotation, like if you're doing your consolidation up north, for instance, you might be able to find some mentors in that hospital, but the reality of you coming back face to face with them may be a bit slim if you decide not to work up north. But again, with the way that things are right now, it's very easy to hop on a call or to video call somebody. So that's a really good question, and I would advise that anybody who has any sort of experience that you're looking to pick their brain about is a great mentor.
Awesome. Definitely. Good to know. Thanks for the advice.
I'll also expand on that as well, because I know in like where I live, they actually will pay your tuition off. Like they give you incentive to come north. I say it's north, but it's kind of northwest Ontario. And if you travel at 6 hours, 7 hours from here, you'll end up in Manitoba, right? So you're exposed a lot more, and at that level, or at those rural organizations. Sorry, I stumbled there, but those organizations that are remote, they will. It's important that everyone who actually listens to this knows that they will fund your education. Like they'll pay off your school if you have been doing it all yourself, or if not, they'll actually give you incentive to come to Elliott Lake, to come to Thunder Bay, to go to, James Bay and Hudson Bay and all those locations, not to mention Nunavut and Northwest Territories, but you just need to find, like, the resources, like you said, are out there. It's just a matter of finding them and doing those deep delves. So I just wanted to kind of expand a little bit more on that, because we're nursing students, all of us, and actually you're a nurse now. You can find Haddon on ResearchGate. So I guess that's a great question. Where can we find your research besides ResearchGate?
Yeah, so my mass gathering research is all on ResearchGate, which is, I think at this point we've put everything up for free. So yeah, lots of case studies, some systematic reviews will be up there soon, as well as a few other things that we're kind of working on. So yeah, sorry, I feel like we didn't go into it too much, but if you're interested in kind of seeing what else is out there, yeah, check out ResearchGate. I'm also on Twitter at Haddon Rabb.
Plug.
And if anyone's looking for my email address or anything, I'm sure they can message you guys about it. And
yeah, we'll facilitate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and very happy to be involved in that educational aspect of wilderness disaster or emergency care.
Haddon Rabb, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Haddon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, no problem.
Yeah, awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.